You thought I was talking about Tam Tam? No, 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 girly. I was talking about your mate, High Lord of the Night Court himself, Mr. Rhysand. Hi guys, it's Sarah, and welcome back to another video here on my channel. I'm down on the floor today because I needed a little change of pace. I hope you don't mind. I'm taking a little bit of a break from the Vampire Diaries videos. I'm hitting like a crazy busy patch right now in my business world life, and so I just needed videos that I could get out a little bit quicker with a little bit less of an edit time. So this is the first one. We're going to be doing a deep dive into the man, the myth, the legend, Mr. Rhysand. Rhys is a character from the SJM universe. He is from the Court of Thorns and Roses series. He's one of our main characters. He's like the secondary love interest and ends up being the main love interest, and yeah, it's a whole thing, so we'll get into it. But that's where he's from. I'm going to call him Rhysand for the sake of this video because technically that is correct. When I read the story myself for the first time, I preferred Rhysand and calling him Rhys. I liked it more. To me, like his nickname being Rhys sounds like a real name. Like, I don't know. It just made it sound less fantastical to me, but his name being Rhysand and going by Rhys, in my head it made it sound more fake and like a fantasy name. But I don't know, that's an unpopular opinion. A lot of people like that his name is Rhys. I'm gonna call him that for this video. Please don't yell at me, okay? It's okay. He's both things. He's all things. He's the High Lord of the Night Court at the end of the day. It's all right. I don't think he's gonna be that mad. So I'm making this video mostly because I have a lot of thoughts on our boy, okay? And people seem to he's very polarizing, which when I first read the series, I didn't think that. He's got some traits that I don't personally love, that I wouldn't love in like a real life boy, but in a book, they make sense. They're a little bit extra, and I liked him a lot. He was like very much one of my favorite characters. I also really love Lucian. So to give you that context, when you put Tamlin and Lucian in front of me, I went with Lucy, okay? That's who I wanted her to be with in the beginning. And then you meet Rhys and you're like, oh, that's what I want, actually. So from the jump, I was Team Rhys. But at the same time, I see where people are coming from, where they have like little nitpicky things about him that they don't like personality-wise. I get it. What I don't love is that the whole fandom, for the most part, just like crucified him when Silver Flames came out, which is the 5th book in the series that is basically a spin-off. Like, for me, the first 3 books are like the story. That's what I wanted. It could have just been a trilogy and end at the 3rd book, and I would have been like, this is incredible. However, then she slipped in a little novella. I don't like the Winter Solstice novella. I don't think the Winter Solstice novella was necessary, okay? It's just not something that I wanted for myself. She did it. It was a choice. And then we get Silver Flames, which is like a spin-off for Cassian and Nesta, who are 2 characters from the main group of people that we've been with this whole time. And in Silver Flames, Rhys is just like an entirely different person, okay? And his character just gets absolutely assassinated, and I could not stand him. And this is coming, like I said, I loved Rhys. I thought Rhys was great. I really enjoyed like the way that his traumas were talked about. They're not really explored very much. We'll get into that. But I really liked Rhys. I thought he was complex and interesting and really, really fun to read. And then Silver Flames, I was like, I hate him. I hate him so much. And that angers me. That really makes me sad that I go from loving this character so much to despising him because the author, I think, needed a plot device and she just sacrificed Rhys. He's been through enough. Okay, Sarah, you didn't have to do that to him. It was unnecessary and I didn't want it. So let's get into a little bit of backstory. I'm going to be spoiling everything for the most part. So if you've not read the books and you don't want to know anything about Rhys, this is not the video for you because I'm going to be getting into it, okay? Rhys is the son of the High Fae ruler of the Night Court, and then his mother is an Illyrian woman, which the Illyrians are like a subpopulation in the Night Court. They're not strictly High Fae. They have a lot of similar characteristics, but they also have like really big, crazy bat wings, which means that Rhys, being half Illyrian, has access to. So he can fly like his friends. And growing up, he was kind of rowdy and getting into mischief. Sorry, my cat is in front of me currently getting into mischief. But he had a really good relationship with his mom. He really loved her. He had a little sister he was close with. And then his mother helped him kind of adopt and take in his two closest friends, which were Cassian and Asriel. I'm going to call them Cass and Az because I love those two boys. So his mom helped him take them in when they were younger, and they grew up basically as brothers from like I would say like probably like teenage years onward. The way that fairies in Prithian age in this universe is a little weird. We know that Rhys is really old. He's the oldest of his friend group outside of Amryn, who we're not even going to touch on in this. But he's the oldest, and he's quite old, which makes him a lot older than his human mate Farah. But again, we're not going to get into that in this video. We're just not going to touch on it. Growing up as the son of the ruler of the Night Court, he went to a lot of like balls and festivals and things like that in the other courts, and he befriended Tamlin, who was the youngest son of the ruler of the Spring Court. They had like an unlikely bond where both of their peoples were kind of like, you shouldn't be friends with each other, it's weird. But Rhys didn't care, and they continued their friendship. He helped train Tamlin in like the secret Illyrian fighting styles. So a lot of what Tamlin knows how to do, he learned from Rhys. I'm just saying. But Tamlin's father had such a strong hatred for the Night Court and for the fact that they stood against them in the war, and just all of these different things compounded on each other. And it led to Tamlin's father, Tamlin, and his brothers all going after Rhys's mother and sister. They were trying to ambush Rhys and kill him because he was the only heir for the Night Court, but instead they ended up just killing his mother and sister. They did not just kill them, they beheaded them and sent their heads down the river to be found by the Illyrian camps on the water, and then they stole their wings, which, if you can like think in your head about how like Maleficent feels when her wings get stolen in the Sleeping Beauty Maleficent movies that came out, it's that bad. So it's a really big deal. It's really disgraceful that they've been taken. So Rhys and his father pretty much immediately retaliate. They go into the Spring Court. They kill, well, Rhys kills all of Tamlin's brothers in like one fell swoop because, along with his darkness powers, Rhys has like mind control stuff that he can do. So his beast form is like a crow serpent demon thing. So think talons. And every time he reaches into people's minds, that's what people say it feels like, is like dark claws, like scratching at the walls of their mind. I did a truly horrific job of describing Reese's powers to you in this video, honestly, because they're a bit confusing to nail down in the text, but please enjoy this explanation taken from the Akatar Wiki. Rhysand has an extreme amount of power. It exceeds the amount of power of any of the other seven High Lords. He wields darkness manipulation, which means he can control shadows and darkness. We often see like swirls of shadow around him. Az has similar powers, but Reese's are often like depicted as the night sky, so they have like gleaming stars and constellations in them. He can also just straight up make black shadows that do a little bit of his bidding, like Farah feels them touching her a couple times. His mind control powers are called Daimati powers. They allow him to invade and control minds, even ones that are relatively well protected. He can also manipulate and control memories. He says a few times that intense thoughts in unprotected minds just feel like people are yelling their thoughts right at him. He can fly because of his wings, and he can also manipulate when his wings are shown to people. 90% of the time, I would say he keeps them hidden and out of sight, and I've always viewed that personally as a trauma thing related to his mother and sister. He and a few others can winnow, which is basically apparition from Harry Potter. It
doesn't go as far distances for everybody. Rhys has a pretty strong reach with it where he can go, basically from like miles and miles away really quickly. And usually it looks like, they disappear into shadows. His scariest power to me is misting, which is basically where he just disintegrates people into mist at will. We're told and shown in the books that he can do this in a second with barely half a thought.
So that's what he does to Tamlin's brothers. And then Tamlin's father and mother are sleeping when the attack happens. Rhys's dad was supposed to just go kill Tamlin's dad, but instead he killed both of them. So then he's like, "Great, now we just gotta kill Tam Tam." And Rhys is like, "Please don't kill him. Like, I know he wouldn't have done this to me on purpose. I know he was coerced. We need to just leave him be, let him live. It's not worth it." Well, they go to Tam's door. Tam comes out. He smells the blood from his father being killed, and without asking any questions, just kills Rhys's dad in one swift move. So that means that standing in the hallway of the Spring Court Manor in front of Tamlin's bedroom, Tamlin and Rhys just like turn into the High Lords. They like get their father's powers while looking at each other, and their friendship is ended from that point on. They have like a deep seated hatred for each other. The two of them kind of spend time in their respective courts. The war between the mortals and the fairies is still going on, and we end up getting a woman from Hybern who, this is where it's going to get hard to give you backstory without giving you like everything. But Hybern, bad witch king over with the people, the humans. He sends over an advisor named Amarantha. She shows up into Prythian. She takes over Prythian. She ends up like tricking all of the High Lords to bring their courts down to her under the mountain. She takes their powers away and like locks everybody down. She curses Tamlin and she kidnaps Rhys. I say kidnaps. She enslaves Rhys. She doesn't really give him a choice, and she takes him as like her personal sex slave, which is disgusting, and I'll never get over it. We meet Rhys for the first time in Akatar during a celebration at the Spring Court. He shows up and saves Farah from a group of fairies that were trying to hurt her, and then they have kind of an interaction together where she's left feeling a little confused about how she feels about him because he's mysterious, he's sexy, she thinks he's beautiful, and he's not unkind to her in those interactions, but she doesn't know who he is, and he won't tell her who he is, he won't tell her where he's from, he's just like flirting with her, very attentive, clearly curious about her, but that's it. They don't exchange names, nothing happens. The next day, he shows up, presumably to figure out who the mortal woman is that's in Tamlin's lands, and Tamlin and Lucian are like completely terrified of him. So Farah is immediately like, "Oh no, like I talked to this dude and I had no idea who he was, and now I'm finding out that he's the evil, scary ruler of the Night Court that I've heard horror stories about." Rhys makes Tamlin and Lucian beg that he won't tell Amarantha about Farah. Farah gives him a fake name anyway, so they're all kind of like, well, hopefully, if he goes back and tells her the wrong name, it'll lead to nothing. Not realizing that Farah gave him a real fake name. So Rhys ends up kidnapping a poor human girl from Farah's village, and good things do not befall Claire Better, okay? So this whole interaction with Rhys showing up kind of ruins Tamlin's plan to break the curse because he's so afraid that now that Amarantha might know about Farah, it'll all fall apart, and no matter what he does, Farah will end up dead. So he sends her away to the human lands. She very quickly figures out that's not going to work for her. She comes back and heads under the mountain. We learn a little bit more about the curse here, and that's basically that Amarantha came and stole the High Lord's power, and then she also like cursed Tamlin specifically and said, if you can find a human girl to love you in 50 years time, that she has to hate fairies, but if she can love you, I'll free you, I'll free everyone, I'll give you your powers back. Also, I'm keeping Rhys as my little sex toy because he's handsome. So now Farah has come to save Tamlin, and she is completely isolated. She's kept in the dungeon. She's like beaten really badly when she first shows up, and Amarantha gives her 3 tasks. She's like, you can defeat my 3 tasks and you can take Tamlin with you, or you can answer my riddle. And she gives her this like really simple riddle that I thought I knew the answer to, and I was like, "Oh God, Feyre, please." But Feyre is illiterate and not educated very highly, okay? Like, she was a child when her family lost all their money. So it's not going to go well for her to answer a riddle. It's just not going to work. But she handles the first 3 tasks. And she's like, if I can just defeat these tasks, then I can save Tammy and we can go. The first task is defeating this like giant, terrifying worm thing. It's so gross. That whole scene is so gross, but it's basically like gladiator style. So this whole Under the Mountain court is watching this happen to Feyre. No one voted on her or bet on her or thought she could do it, except for Mr. Rhys. He gets in a little bit of trouble with Amarantha over that one, but he did in fact bet on her. There's also a moment where she looks up into the crowd and Rhys is looking down at her and she says like his eyes sparkled with malice. We learn later that he was not angry. He was excited as hell and he thought she looked hot. First task happens, Feyre gets hurt, and Rhys comes into her cell. And still in his like angry boy persona, he grabs her arm and twists it to cause her excruciating pain to get her to realize that she definitely needs his help and she should agree to his bargain. What is his bargain, you may wonder? He wants her to come spend half the month with him every month in the night court. And she's like, absolutely not. I will give you a week. And he's like, okay, yeah, deal. So he heals her and it leaves her with this like tattoo on her arm and a hand. Like this tattoo on her arm and an eye print on her palm. So there's like a beautiful male eye, Rhys's eye, on her hand. And she doesn't know it, but this a tattoo bargain situation gives him access to like seeing what she can see more so than they already have. So during the second task, Feyre is faced with another riddle situation that she needs to read on the wall, and then levers to pull. If she doesn't pull the right lever, she and Lucian, who's been chained to the floor opposite her, will be squished by scalding hot blunted spikes lowering from the ceiling. So Feyre can't read. Not good. Rhys ends up using his mind powers with her to tell her which lever to pull. So he saves her. Now, I'm going to talk about this, okay? Because this is an important part of the first book, and it's an important part of Feyre and Rhys's relationship, and it's not great. But, in my opinion, it could have been much worse. So, one of the things that Rhys does while Feyre's under the mountain is he takes her with him to the different parties that are hosted every night by Amarantha's court. And he dresses her in these like really provocative clothing, like dresses and things. And we learn later, I will say, we learn later that members of Rhys's court, specifically like the Nightmare Court, dress like this. So he's dressing her in like the traditional style of what the people of Amarantha's court think his people wear. Okay? Remember that. But to Feyre, it's like very embarrassing. She doesn't like that she's like basically naked in front of these people. She's very uncomfortable with it. He also has her painted with like different Illyrian style markings that are like swirls all over her body. And then he takes her to these parties. At the parties, he has her drink wine, which kind of drugs her. It makes her forget everything that she goes through that night. And then in the morning, when she wakes up, she's exhausted, so she's sleeping a lot during the day. When she wakes up, she sees that she has like smeared paint like on her hips and her shoulders and things and her arms, but nothing anywhere else. There's nothing like on her legs, nothing on any of her like intimate parts. This is a big deal, okay? Because a lot of people get really upset with Rhys drugging her, and I hear them. I understand why you feel that way. I understand why it's upsetting. It is upsetting. For me, as a reader, I was immediately suspicious because I was like, if he's not doing anything to her, why is he helping her forget these parties? Like, if nothing is that bad happening that he would like not want, he would like want to keep from her, or like, and also, if he's evil, why does he want to keep anything from her? Why would he care if she knows where he touched him or she knows what he did to her? why would he care if he's an evil guy? So I was immediately big brain suspicious of these motivations. It did not make sense to me.
One more thing I cannot believe I forgot. Before the third task, Farah is so defeated and so tired, and just one night she completely almost gives up. She's exhausted, she's hungry, she's hurt, she's all alone. And this beautiful, incredible, uplifting, magical music just flows into her cell, and it surrounds her and makes her feel like she's safe and comforted. And we find out later that that beautiful, beautiful music that she thinks is coming in from, like, the vent, she's like, "Oh, they must be having a party and Rhys didn't take me tonight." No, 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 no. Wherever Rhys is in the castle during that moment, he sends it to her down the little bargain bond that they have, and that's what keeps her going before the third task.
Feyre does end up beating Amarantha. She not only wins the third task, but she answers the riddle correctly. And Amarantha completely cheated and basically like starts killing Feyre in this moment of like anger at having lost and Feyre winning. And Rhys tries to fight back to save her to the point where he is like almost killed himself, because you have to remember Amarantha took their power from them. So they have like little cusps of what they used to be hidden inside, and Rhys like almost dies trying to save Farah. He like crawls on his hands and knees to get to her. She ends up dying, but Rhys convinces everybody, to all the High Lords at least, to give some of their power to bring her back as High Fae.
I said convinces, but he uses his Daimati powers here. We learn later that he basically manipulates them into remembering what she's done for them. So the fact that this human girl came under the mountain and saved them when no one else has been able to, he gets into these like men's heads. And some of them are like, yeah, heck yeah, I want to help her. She deserves to live. And some of them, the High Lord of the Autumn Court, are like, ugh, she deserves nothing. I'm better than her. But they do it anyway because Rhys is like, no, you will be fixing this. Handle it.
Once Fair is awake and healed, she is like asleep with Tamlin in their room, and she feels another pull, similar to the one she felt on the Spring Court celebration night when she went out, even though they'd told her to stay inside. She feels that pull again. She goes outside. She finds Rhys waiting for her. He basically says, like, hey, bye. I just wanted to remind you about our bargain. Don't forget. I'll see you in a couple weeks. And she's like, yeah, okay, great. And then he has this moment of like looking at her, making eye contact, and he like stumbles. And she's like, it's a big deal to her. She's like, he stumbled back, like actually stumbled. And then he just disappears because his powers are back and he can winnow again. So he just poofs out of existence. And she's like, that was weird. Time to go back to the Supreme Court with Tam Tam. Now, A Court of Mist and Fury Rice is just a different breed altogether, okay? I hope you're ready. So basically, Rhys calls in his bargain with Farah the day of her wedding. She is in the process of walking down the aisle to get married to Tam Tam, and she is calling out in her mind for somebody to help her, save her, get her out of this, stop this from happening. And Rhys shows up, and he's like, surprise, I'm taking you away. And then she panics, and she's like, oh my god, Tamlin, I don't really want to go with him. Don't let him take me. But Rhys is like, a bargain's a bargain, a deal's a deal. I'm taking you. And he just snatches her from the wedding and takes her to the night court. It is nothing like what she was told to expect. It's not scary, it's not dark. It's this beautiful crystal palace, like made out of moonstone. And she's shocked. There's like huge big windows. It feels like she's like floating in the sky because there's like all of these clouds and stuff like clinging to the city and like keeping the view obscured, but like in the most beautiful way. So she has spent all of this time in the Spring Court feeling trapped and isolated and stifled. And now she's in this place where everything is like open and airy and beautiful. And she's like, this is so not where I thought this guy lived. What is going on? They start having their monthly visits. The wedding between Tamlin and Farah ends up getting called off and postponed. So she just starts spending weekly visits with Rhys. in these time periods with him, he constantly like remarks on how thin she is, and he's like, "Do they just not feed you in the spring court? Like, what's going on?" He also admits that because of the bargain that they have and the tattoo on her hand, he can see and feel all of these things that she's going through. So he's aware that she's having like horrific nightmares. He's aware that she's throwing up constantly during the night because she's so sick over what happened while she was under the mountain. And he's aware that nobody seems to be helping her. So he offers kind of friendship, and he teases her to get her to feel emotions. Like, there's multiple times where we realize that like he's been poking fun at her to get her to be angry because she was so flat, she wasn't feeling anything. And Farah realizes that too. And multiple times she's like, he's the only person that can get me to like feel anything in my depression, even if it's anger or annoyance. Like, at least it's a feeling, at least something's happening. He ends up teaching her to read. He also starts teaching her how to shield her mind from mental attacks, because, especially getting closer and closer with him, he's like, "Look, you got to know you can protect yourself, okay? Right now, you're like a sitting duck. I can feel and hear pretty much everything you're thinking at all times. We should work on that. Also, I know you think I'm hot." And he also really wants her to work with them, him and his friends, the inner circle. He wants them to work together to defeat the war that is coming. Nothing's like really set into motion like strongly in Mist and Fury, but we know that we're gearing up for a big battle. Like, there is going to be war coming again to Prithian and the Mortal Lands where Fair's from. Like, it's all going to unfold soon. And Rhys wants her on his side. She's initially like very much against this, but as she gets to know him more, as they work together more, she gets to know his friends more, and she realizes that all this stuff that Tamlin told her about them just simply isn't true. Whether he was lying outright or he was lied to himself, she doesn't know, but it's not true. And now that she's made her own picture of who Rhys is, she really likes him and she wants to work with him, and she thinks he's right about the upcoming war and the fact that they have to fight and the fact that they have to gather forces. She wants to be a part of that, especially if it means keeping her sisters back in the Mortal Lands safe. Tamlin doesn't handle this like growing bond between her and the Night Court very well at all. He ends up like snapping at one point and just locking her in the manor because he's like, "I don't trust that you're not going to leave or do something stupid. It's too dangerous. I have to protect you. This is the only way I know how to do it." Farah has like a full on mental breakdown in that moment over being trapped inside. She has like a full panic attack. She screams out for somebody to help her. And Rhys sends his cousin Moore, who I love, my main girly Moore, to save Farah and pull her out and bring her to the Night Court. And this is when she really gets close with them, because at this point, she's like a refugee from the Spring Court, and they've taken her in, and they're really kind and really funny. Cassian helps her learn how to fight, and in doing that kind of works through some of her traumas with her. Rhys is really affectionate in like a friend way. I will tell you that. Like, there are a couple moments of them like flirting with each other as things go on, but for the most part, he keeps things fairly platonic. Like, he'll say something flirty, but he's not touchy with her. He's not like coercive in any way. He's just there for her when she needs him to be. When Rhys takes her to Valaris, which is the hidden city that's underneath this house that she's been staying in that was surrounded by clouds, it's been kept from her that there is a city that she could go and visit. And Valaris is basically the hidden jewel of the Night Court. And he explains to Farah that when the curse with Amarantha went down, he had gone to Under the Mountain with members of the Court of Nightmares, which is like the scary version of the Night Court. Okay, I hope you're keeping up. Prithian lore is a little confusing, but he had gone with those people under the mountain. He had not taken his inner circle with him. They had stayed behind and watched over Valaris because he had felt like something was off, something was wrong. He just didn't trust Amarantha. So when they got under the mountain and she cast the curse, he used like the last possible moment of his power to just blast out and like cloak Valaris, cloak all his friends. And he mentally told them what had happened and was like, "Do not come." So he had locked down his friends basically and given them like no chance to come save him, no chance to do anything, to get involved in any way because he didn't want them getting hurt. So he had sacrificed himself completely for not only Valaris itself, but like his closest friends. And in doing that, he had basically locked himself in to being this like scary ruler of the night court that we know now in this moment with Farah is not real. That is like a show that he puts on. It's a fake persona. It's how he keeps the court of nightmares in check and keeps people fearing the night court so that they don't come in and like risk war against them because Rhys is pretty much all powerful and it would not be good if the Prithian High Lords turned on him. That would be bad for everybody involved. So you can imagine that this time under the mountain, if it was bad for Farah, and she was there for like a month, 3 months, she was there for, I think it might be 3 months, because it's like 3 full moons or something. And it was so scary and detrimental for her mental health that she is like completely gone off the deep end and losing it. Okay, Rhys was there for 50 years. And not only was he there doing whatever this crazy demon of a queen wanted, he was also sleeping with her. So you can imagine the mental state this poor man is in, okay? And we learn bits and pieces of this in Mist and Fury. There's a moment where they're at the townhouse in Valaris and the house starts shaking and like night and scary stars and darkness start pouring into Feyre's room. And she's like, what is going on? And when she goes out of the hallway, it's worse. It's pitch dark. She gets to Rhys's room. It's Rhys having a nightmare and his powers exploding out of him, basically tearing the house down. So we see the two of them bonding over their shared trauma, whereas Tamlin shut down. Like post Under the Mountain, he doesn't really talk to Feyre about it. He acts like nothing happened. He doesn't seem to be having nightmares, having issues. He's just like kind of cold, detached from her. She can see that Rhys is struggling with everything that he's been through, and that definitely bonds them because it gives them something to talk about, and she doesn't have to hide with him. She doesn't have to pretend to be happy or pretend to like think everything's normal and everything's fine, which is how she feels when she's with Tamlin. Now that they're working together, they start trying to figure out little things that they could do to help win the war once it starts. One of those things is going to the summer court and getting something that can hopefully help them defeat the evil king. When they get there, they complete the mission that they need to complete. It bonds Feyre with the inner circle even more, but it does go south and they end up with blood rubies on their head, which is basically like the summer court's way of being like, you're in trouble and we hate you and we're going to kill you. Everybody kind of laughs them off a little bit. Like it's not, nobody seems to think it's that serious except for Rhys, who is like super devastated by this because now he's looped his friends into something where they quite literally have like bounties on their heads. So not great. It becomes really obvious to me, at least, the more you get to know Rhys, that everything he does, all of the things like the lies that he tells, because he lies a lot. That's the thing. And he does what I hate most, which is like lying by omission. So he'll just like leave key details out and then be like, oh, oops, did I forget to tell you that? And it's like, you didn't forget, broski. You just didn't do it because you didn't want to. And I don't love that about him. And neither does Farah. And she calls him out on it. Every time it happens, she's like, how dare you? You have to stop keeping things from me. Knock it off. But for me, as a reader, it's very obvious that Rhys is this way because he's been hurt and he's secretive and careful because he's been hurt and he tries to keep his friends from doing stupid things and getting involved because he's been hurt. And his nightmare is seeing that happening to them. He tells Farah at one point that when he was under the mountain, like having to sleep with Amarantha and do all these like sexual things with her, he had ways of like keeping himself, like he basically like concocted images in her head with his powers to like make her think he was enjoying it and stuff where he was miserable the entire time. But he says that the reason like he kept doing it and the reason why he never caved in and gave up and like outed himself to her was because it was better for him to be there than for him to picture Cassian or Azriel in his place. And he was like, I would do it again. I would do it again if it meant that my brothers didn't have to do this. My boy.
If you've seen fan arts of Faysand where Farah is sitting on Rhys's lap on a throne, those are from Mist and Fury moments. Basically, he takes her to the Court of Nightmares a couple times while they're working on these little missions here and there, also to spread word to Tamlin and kind of get the courts talking about the fact that she is with Rhysand now. So they dress her up in night court clothing, kind of similar to what she wore under the mountain, but a little fancier. He gives her a crown and jewelry to wear, and then he makes a point of like putting her on his lap and almost doing like what Amarantha did to him in public to Farah, but I think, especially because we get to hear his thoughts sometimes and kind of see through his eyes a few times, he's definitely setting it up as more of like, she's important to me. I dare you to like say the wrong thing. I dare you to do the wrong thing. He makes a show of hurting Moore's father after he calls Farah a whore because that's what everybody called Rhys about Amarantha. And yeah, so he uses it as like a power play move, and she likes it. Okay, I'm just gonna say it. There's a scene, all right? They both enjoy playing these roles together. Okay, it's an adult novel.
Then we get to almost the end of Mist and Fury, and the biggest lie of all comes out. Uh, Rhys and Feyre are on a mission together. They're flying over a forest. They get attacked. Rhys goes down. Feyre fights to the death to get him safe, but he's hurt really badly. And so she calls in a favor from our good friend the Suriel, which is like a scary fairy that we love. We love dearly in this fandom. One of my favorite characters. It shows up and it tells Farah, "Oh, well, you've got powers from all of the different High Lords, so you have healing in your blood from the Dawn Court. Go ahead and give Rhys a little bit of your blood. Your mate'll be fine." Did you catch that? Because Farah sure does. She's like, "My what? My who? Whomst are you talking about?" And the Suriel's like, "I'm sorry, did you not know? Did he not tell you? I told you, girl, to stay with the High Lord. Do you not remember that back in Akatar when we first met and I told you to stay with the High Lord and everything would be fine? You thought I was talking about Tam Tam? No, 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 girly. I was talking about your mate, High Lord of the Night Court himself, Mr. Rhysand." She goes to him and she's like, "Drink my blood, you mother." And she's so angry. She's like, "Drink my blood, you stupid idiot." And he's just like, "Oh, thank you so much. I feel so much better now." And she's like, "Yeah, so when were you going to tell me I was your mate?" And he's like, "My what? No, I didn't." She's like, "You're going to deny it? You're going to lie again?" And he's like, "Okay, let me explain." Does she give him a chance to explain? No. She forces him to use his like barely healed powers to winnow them back to where the friends are. They show up with the friends. She drops him in the mud and is like, "Stay down on the ground." So he's like crawling through the mud to her. While Cassian tries to help him up, she goes straight to Moore and she's like, "Get me out of here, Moore. I don't want to see him." And Moore's like, "Okay." And takes her away. And she leaves Reese behind. This boy who has horrific abandonment issues, okay? They've already gotten into an argument and she hurt his feelings because she looked him in the eyeballs and she said to him, "Who would want you? You're such a big, stupid mess of a man. No one could ever love you. Certainly not me." Imagine your mated soulmate tells you that. The person that you are supposed to be with and you know it in your gut because he did. Imagine they look you in the eyeballs and they tell you that you're ugly and stupid and gross and they never want anything to do with you. And how could anybody love you? After everything this man has been through, I think not. I was livid with her, okay? I was livid. So that's why he didn't tell her about them being mates, okay? I'm losing my glasses because I'm so upset. They do end up reuniting and they make up. Reese gives her this whole long backstory, which is basically his version of events through Akatar. So when they met at that spring festival, he's the reason why she came out to the hills. He called her out there because since she'd been born, pretty much, he had had these images of like a human life. So while he's under the mountain with Amarantha trapped, he's getting these like images of like a human woman's hand painting and like designs on a broken cottage and food and hunting and the snow in the woods. And he couldn't figure out where all that was coming from or what was happening. But then that night in the spring court, he meets Farah and he's like, oh my God, his first words to her, there you are. I've been looking for you. Oh my God. Okay. So he knew from the jump who she was. He didn't realize they were mates right away, but he knew, like, we have a connection. Something's going on here. Then he finds out she's with Tamlin, so he backs off. And he has an argument with Lucian about this where he says, like, I was interested in her before I knew she was with Tamlin. And when I found out, I backed off and I was willing to let her marry Tamlin if it meant she would be happy, even though it was going to cause me like excruciating pain. I was going to let her do it. Then I realized he was mistreating her and I thought to myself, no, absolutely not. And so he stepped in, and that's when he like put himself into her life and let himself be an option, okay? Only after issues started arising with Tamlin and he realized she was unhappy. They end up in that moment telling each other that they love each other, and she's like, I'm honored to be your mate, Rhys, which, girl, you better be, okay? That whole sequence of events, her leaving him in the mud, hurt. No, absolutely not. I was very anti Farah for a little bit, but they get back together, everything's fine. They end up getting married, and then at the end of the book, things go to absolute hell in a handbasket with Tamlin, where he shows up with her sisters and the king. The sisters get turned into High Fae, and then Feyre has to like have the king break the bond, not the mating bond, but the bond on her hand, the bargain. She's like, Rhys has been keeping me trapped with him, and he brainwashed me with his mind powers because I'm just a weak High Fae. I don't have any secret powers of my own, Tamlin. Please get me out of here. So Rhys and the inner circle escape with the sisters. They take them away, and Feyre willingly goes back into the spring court with Tamlin and Lucian as a spy. Then we get a beautiful little Rhys POV at the very end of that book, where Mor and Amren are like, oh my God, we have to go back and get her. And Rhys is like, no, no, no. She's fine. She's okay. She made her choice. We have a spy on the inside now. And they're like, she's not a spy. She's your mate. And he's like, actually, she's High Lady of the Night Court, and she can do what she freaking wants. Okay? So, yeah, you heard that right. Not only are they mates, not only are they married, Rhys had her sworn in as High Lady, which means that Tamlin, who was like, oh, there are no High Ladies, Farah. Girl fairies don't have powers. Lame. Rhys was like, actually, you're just as strong as me. You're just as powerful. You should have just as much power over my kingdom. So he freaking makes her his equal, y'all. Oh, now, a lot happens in Wings and Ruin. The third book is honestly one of my favorites. A lot of people get really bored because the first half of the book is Farah being a spy, Rhys and the gang working together at the same time but separated from her. They're trying to defeat the King of Hybern. They're trying to do all these different like things to gather power. And it is a little boring, but I like a war novel and I like character-driven books. So big thing with SJM, character driven. The plot is there, the plot is sprinkled in, but you're reading these books because you like the characters.
There's a moment during the battle when Feyre lies to Mor and leaves to run an errand for herself. Once she's back, we learn how devastated and afraid Mor was that she'd left without telling them where she was going, and that she hadn't trusted Mor enough to tell her that she needed to leave. Feyre apologizes, but Rhys tells her that she shouldn't be sorry. He's like, you took it into your own hands to do what you thought was best, and you have nothing to apologize for. And it's so interesting to me that even in this moment, when he was just as afraid as Moore was, he thinks to himself that lying and sneaking, if it's what you think is best, is the right thing to do. Tell me that doesn't sound like trauma, because at this point he's worked through that with himself and he's been really trying to stop it. But that's his first reaction to Farah is like, oh my gosh, you didn't mean to do it. I know you didn't. It's okay. You know, you did what you thought was best.
The final stand involves Farah like basically draining herself. So Rhys comes in and helps her. He gives her his power. And in doing so, he gives all of his power and he dies. So they win the war, and then Feyre turns around and Rhys is on the ground dead. Don't worry. Okay, don't panic. They save him. She convinces the High Lords to save him yet again. So he comes back. Amryn, who we also lost in the battle, also comes back. Everybody's fine. Everybody lives. Everybody wins. They win the war. Okay. The end of the book is them starting to plan like rebuilding efforts and all of that. And it ends with Farah and Rhys agreeing that they're so happy to be together. They are going to make a pact that from now on, if one of them dies, the other one dies, because now they've both lost each other and brought the other one back from the death. They're not doing it again. So that's the new bargain that they strike at the end of the book, is that if one of them dies, they both die. That probably won't have any repercussions. And okay, like I said, I wish the story ended there. I wish that was the end, all right? But it's not. We get this weird little blue novella, which is A Court of Frost and Starlight. It's a winter solstice like spin-off novella about the inner circle, and it really is there to set up Silver Flames, which you don't need because we get enough in the first 3 books that I would have jumped into Silver Flames and been fine. Okay, she left enough breadcrumbs that I knew where we were going with that. The biggest takeaways: Rhys goes and visits Tamlin, and he finds Tamlin like in his broken, destroyed manor that he hasn't fixed, surrounded by no one, no servants, no friends, no family. Like, Springcourt's basically desolate, it's falling apart. And instead of being enraged, instead of hating him or killing him or any of the things that he could do, because Tamlin has been awful, all right? Since he lost Farah, he acted like a spoiled little brat. He threw tantrum after tantrum after tantrum. He made terrible decisions that really decimated Farah's life and hurt the people she loved. So Rhys, as her mate, would have every instinct in him to kill Tamlin, to hate Tamlin. And instead, he just feels pity. He's just sad. And he's just like, dude, you have to eat. Like, you have to live. You're going to waste away and die if you don't get it together. And Tamlin's like, is Farah ever going to forgive me? And that's like all he can think. And Rhys is like, I don't know, dude. Like, you're gonna have to ask her that yourself. Rhys also buys Farah a house for her birthday, which is on the winter solstice, to build them like a big grand mansion estate that they can live in with their friends and their family, and they can have children one day. And in this book and in previous books, Farah has made it very clear, and she makes it clear to us again. She does not want children yet. She is still a kid, okay? Well, I say that. She's like 22 or 23 at the end of the books, and she's young and she has not lived because so much of her life has been fighting for other people. So she's not really just gotten to enjoy being alive. So she tells Rhys that she just wants to explore with him, she wants to rule with him, she just wants them to have a little bit of time together, and he agrees. He's like, yes, absolutely, I love you, I love the life we're building. End of the Christmas novella. So Silver Flames is a book. It's the 5th book in the series. It's a Nessian spinoff, so it centers on Nesta, Farah's oldest sister, and Cassian, Rhys's brother, and their love story slash their traumas slash all of that. Rhysand's character gets completely crucified in this book, and I hate it. I really, really hate it. So let's start from the beginning. We open and we find out that Farah is pregnant. But Sarah, you just told us that she didn't want children. Yeah, I know. She told us she didn't want children, and yet here we are, and SJM has given her a baby. Yay. Everyone's excited, including Farah and Rhys. You know, it's earlier than they planned. Do they mention that? No, they're just excited to be starting a family, even though a couple months ago they didn't want one. SJM pitches a lot of what is quote unquote wrong with Rhys: his overprotectiveness, his anger, his moodiness. He's like all of the bad qualities of himself that he has been working on and has slowly been letting go of just come back, but like tenfold. And you're just like, Rhys, my guy, take a chill pill. And he cannot. He cannot take a chill pill because he is a mated big alpha male and his wife is pregnant. And that means that he has to be extra big and extra scary and extra mean and extra awful. Why? Why does he have to do that? Why Can't he, when he's been working on trust, lean on his two brothers and know that they would never ever let anything happen to Farah? Because not only is she Rhys's mate, which means that like they love her because Rhys loves her, she's the High Lady. So like as members of the court, they're like sworn to protect her and love her. And they've told her that multiple times. Okay, so why can't Rhys relax?
We get a really cute moment when they first tell everybody in the inner circle, their families, that she's pregnant, where Cassian just like tackles Rhys in like a fit of joy and they start like tumbling around on the ground laughing and they're all excited to be uncles. I'm so much more interested in that. I love these people because they're a found family. I'm so much more interested in happiness and seeing them joyful, and Rhys getting the chance to build a family for himself after losing his mom and sister. This is what he's been wanting, you know? This is what he's been after. And that would have been, I could have read a whole book. The winter novel could have been that for me. She could have gotten pregnant early and they could have been like, "Oh my god, this is going to change everything. Are we sure we want to do this?" And if they'd worked through it that way and Rhys had been like, "I'll do whatever you want. I understand that this isn't what you wanted right now." And then they could have come to terms with it together and been joyful and we could have seen the happiness of their pregnancy. I would have been down for that. That would have been fine. It wouldn't have been what I expected, but I would have enjoyed it.
My least favorite thing that he does, he lies to Farah about the baby. They find out pretty early on that the baby is going to be like mostly full Illyrian, so it's going to come out with wings, which Rhys does not. Rhys doesn't have wings that are permanent. He can kind of make them come and go, whereas Cassian and Azriel, who are full Illyrians, have wings all the time. The baby's going to have wings, okay? So the healer tells Rhys, Farah's going to die because Farah is High Fae. She's not Illyrian in any way, so she is not made to birth a baby with wings. And even though we're immortals and we have all of this healing magic, I don't know how to perform a C section. It can't be done. She'll bleed out. Do they discuss the pros and cons of keeping said winged baby? No, no. Rhys tells the boys and then swears the entire inner circle to secrecy so that Farah doesn't get, upset during her pregnancy. Because that sounds good. That doesn't go against all of the things she's asked him to do. Stop lying to her, stop keeping things from her, stop having their friends keep things from her. That doesn't go against all of those things that he promised multiple times he would stop doing. Okay, SJM, sure, why not? What else is he gonna do in this book? Ooh, and I'll remind you that because they made that bargain at the end of Wings and Ruin, when Farah dies delivering Winged Baby, Rhys will also die. The whole royal family will just be dead in one go. But don't tell Farah. She doesn't have any right to know that or make an informed decision about keeping the baby. Most of this book, as I said, is centered on Nesta and Cassian. So this stuff going on with Farah and the pregnancy is peripheral now, which is silly to me. It's a silly little plot device and I hate it. But Nesta is not doing well, okay? And up until this book, I didn't really like Nesta that much, but I also didn't just like outright hate her. She's very cold, she's very snarky, she's intense. The thing that I, like most of the inner circle, dislike about Feyre's sisters is that when they were all starving and dying in the woods together, they just let Feyre go out and hunt and never tried to do anything to help. And so Nesta being the oldest sister and me being an oldest sister, I can't relate to that, okay? If I was in a situation like this with my siblings, we would be working together. We would all be contributing. And I would be in charge because I'm the oldest. I would not tell my youngest brother to go forth and catch food, okay? Unless he wanted to, unless he was the one that felt safe doing that and that was his choice. That's not how it goes down with Nesta, okay? She is not a kind person. Over the course of the war books, we've seen a little bit more of her. We understand a little bit more of where she's coming from. And now we're just like thrown into an omnipresent POV of her. So we're seeing how affected she is by almost losing Cassian in the war, seeing Elaine get kidnapped, being turned high fae against her will. She's really struggling. She's been through a lot, and we understand it a little bit more. The unfortunate thing is that instead of getting help, the inner circle has basically just been letting her like throw a tantrum in their minds and just deal with it on her own because they don't want to take the time to get to know her and try to understand why she's so mean and grumpy, why she comes off as cold. They just let her do her own thing. Her own thing means having a lot of pointless sex, drinking a lot of alcohol, taking drugs, and listening to music at taverns. So she's really unwell. She's not working through any of her trauma, she's just covering it up. They end up holding an intervention for her. They get Cassian to bring her to the new fancy house, the river house that Rhys bought Feyre at the end of the Starlight book. And at the intervention, Rhys is basically like, you're done spending all of our money. You're done wasting your life away. I'm not going to let Feyre watch her sister kill herself anymore. So get over it. It's time to be better now. Does anyone suggest therapy? Does anyone suggest talking it out, getting to the root of the problem? No, of course not. Rhys just insists that she be moved into the House of Wind, which is that big moonstone palace. And he's like, you got to live there. You got to train with Cassian. Get better. Good luck. And that's it. That's like literally it. SJM has this whole thing where she like wants us to think that the best way to heal your traumas is through like physical activity. So Nesta does get better as the book goes on, but it's like we don't get into the root of her issues. Everything is like glossed over. And that is a big problem that I have with Rhys as well. So Nesta ends up telling Feyre about the baby situation, and Feyre is upset. But you know who is really upset? Rhysand, okay? He like erupts and basically is like, get her out of here or I'm going to flay her alive. And Cassian has to swoop in and grab Nesta and take her away because Rhys can't hold himself back from literally murdering her. But then at the very end of the book, Feyre is giving birth. They all come to watch her give birth. She's dying, which means that Rhys is dying. So it's not going well for the royal family. Nesta, over the course of the book, has discovered her own powers. She ends up being the only one who can like fix what's going on, save the baby, save Feyre, save Rhys. See, I want to call him Rice so bad. Save him. They all live. And in that moment, Rhys like drops to his knees and like hugs Nesta and cries and tells her thank you over and over again. And it's a really sweet, wonderful scene. I like that moment, okay? That point of the book, I enjoyed that whole segment. How we got to there infuriates me because it doesn't do Nesta any favors to me, okay? I know that there's a lot of people that really like this book. I relate to Nesta, okay? But I do not like the way her traumas and the way the book itself is like crafted because it just like negates really looking into the mental side of what's going on with her, and it just kind of makes it all like, oh, do some yoga. Do some yoga, get really strong and read your smut books and you'll be fine. You'll be just fine, okay? Slap a band-aid on it, you're good. And I disagree with that. And I think it's really unhealthy. And I really, really, really hate that Rhys, who has also been through so much and is also traumatized, doesn't look at Nesta and feel pity for her. He feels pity for Tamlin, but he doesn't feel pity for Nesta. And it doesn't make sense to me because Nesta is Ferris flesh and blood. So you would think that there would be a part of him that, even just if it's the mating connection that we learn so much about, and it applies to other things like Cassian and Azriel love Feyre because she's Rhys's mate. That plays into their love for her, but it doesn't play into how Rhys feels for Elain and Nesta. Like, that doesn't make any sense to me. I don't understand. SJM, explain. I also want to just touch on real fast that there is a subgroup of people in the fandom that think that Rhys could be evil, and this whole time he's genuinely been evil. And there's things that tie into it, like there's like little hints to it throughout. If you've read the Crescent City books, there's hints to like those worlds being connected. I can see it on one hand. It will be really, really interesting to me if that's the way she goes with it. And if she does, it would honestly help me make sense of how badly his character goes in Silver Flames, because to me, it felt like she was setting it up for him to grow as a person, change, find healing in his traumas, which his traumas are so glossed over. If nothing else, the sexual trauma that he goes through with Amarantha, we get like one scene where when he is with Feyre sexually, like she realizes that he's trying to like remake a memory with her to cover up a memory with Amarantha, but we never hear it from him. We only ever see things from Feyre's point of view, and we never get a really good conversation where we can hear Rhys's own words about what he's been through. And that I think was a missed opportunity because, for one thing, just in media, you don't get a lot of men with sexual trauma. Rhys goes through unimaginable sexual trauma, and then it's just not really talked about. It's kind of glossed over, and that upsets me. And then there's the whole issue with like losing his mom and sister in a really traumatic way. We kind of see the repercussions from that, which is like his overprotectiveness with the women in his life, meaning Feyre, Moore, Amryn. He tends to be a little bit more cautious with them. Amryn, not so much, because she is like even older than he is, even more powerful than he is. So I think he, knows he doesn't need to like kid glove her, but more in Feyre especially, he tends to like keep things from them or want to protect them. He has to fight that instinct of like coddling them more, I think. And I feel like that comes from the fact that he lost the women in his life already once and he doesn't want that to happen again. There's this whole aspect in the SJM world where it's like the alpha male situation. The fairies have a lot of like hyper masculine stuff that they deal with. And Rhys, for the most part, talks about it like he fights against it, and like he shows that he's like more evolved and he doesn't like have to act that way, and Tamlin's just a beast and he can't control it. And then we get Silver Flames Rhys, and he goes off the deep end, and he's like crazy protective, crazy aggressive, like really annoying. And that is stuff that Feyre has told him multiple times she does not want, she does not like, she does not enjoy. So up until that point, he had kind of turned that part of his brain off and tried really hard to not be that because he knows that's not the kind of man she wants to be with. And then it just all goes to poop in Silver Flames, and it really upsets me. So, do I think Rhys is evil? No. But I see the theories, okay? I understand where you guys are coming from with that, and I would be down for it. I love a good villain, okay? I'd be down for it if we could make it make sense. If we could tie all the worlds together and make it make sense, I would be okay with it. Do I know if we're going to get that? I don't know. And I don't know if it will be good, okay? That's the thing. That's why I wish it had just been a trilogy, because I think Wings and Ruin, that was all I needed, okay? I had enough tidbits on Nesta and Cassian. I knew they were probably going to be a couple. And Silver Flames, I don't think the baby was necessary. I think using pregnancy as the plot device, it butchered Rhys, and then it just like made a mess for everybody to clean up, and then the cleanup was pointless. Like there are so many other ways that we could have shown Nesta and Rhys bonding that didn't involve his wife almost dying from a pregnancy and Nesta saving her. If it needed to be Feyre almost dying, it could have been any other situation. It could have been like a freak accident. And then maybe it's Rhys's fault. Maybe they get into like a flight accident or something. I don't know. Okay. It could have been anything. And then Nesta saves her. And that's the moment where Rhys is like, man, you do love her. She is your sister. Because that would have been more powerful to me. I think like Rhys and Nesta would understand each other and would just get where the other one is coming from in a way that SJM just doesn't even give them a chance to do, because she just makes Rhys angry at her and he just never gives her a chance. And he's like, he even says at one point, he's like, everything I've been doing and letting you get away with all this was because Feyre wanted you to get away with it and she wanted to coddle you and I'm done babying you. Sir, just talk to her. What if you just talked to her? What if you just said, hey, I too have been through some things. Let's discuss. So the point of this video was to just talk to you guys about Rhys, explain his character a little bit more, because I don't know, it's not that I don't think people understand him. I just think that like Silver Flames as a book really makes you hate him, and for me, Silver Flames as a book just shouldn't exist in the way that it does because it doesn't make any sense. It terminates all the things we built up in the other books, just for plot value, and then the plot is dumb. So I hope that this helps a little bit into breaking down his character, finding a little bit more sympathy for him, because I think that he is one of those, like, he's one of the book talk boys that I just like, I really love. I love that he's still funny, he still is loving, he's still so kind. And then the relationships that he has with his family members, like, given everything that all of them have been through, they love so fiercely and they're so connected and protective of each other. And they're just like the most ideal found family. I love them together. I mean, yeah, I am a little biased. I love Rhys so much that he's one of my bats on my arm. My bat tattoo is my favorite Morley Gray men from my life. And he is this little bat right here, the little guy at the top, because I thought it was funny. Because he has the smallest wingspan between the three bat boys. So that's why he's the little baby bat at the top. But I hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, please consider giving the video a like and subscribing to the channel. I'm here every other Friday, so 2 videos a month, and I'm still not sure what my next video is going to be. I really want to do a deep dive into Lucian, but I also could see myself sitting here talking about Tam Tam for a little while. So let me know what you guys want to hear, if there's anybody you want to see me talk about next, or any book you want to see me talk about next. I don't know. It just felt right to start with Rhys, you know? I could sit here and talk about him for hours, but I hope you're doing so well, and I will see you so soon. Have a good one. Bye.